holding 9 marriages, but being told that there is only half a year left. Chen Ping'an decided to cut ties and go down the mountain to find his mother-in-law to return the goods. Chen Ping'an. I really came to get married. Fiancé A.E. Chen Ping'an, am I only worth 100,000 yuan in your eyes? Chen Ping'an. I am serious about getting out of marriage, even if the old age comes. Chapter 1. Return of Goods from the Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is 100,000 yuan. Take the money and get out of here. Outside the Wu family villa, a wealthy woman threw a stack of cash at the young Taoist in front of her, her eyes filled with disgust and impatience. The noble woman is Li Guiying, the homemaker of the Wu family in Jiangzhou. Chen Ping'an was momentarily taken aback, then showed a calm smile. I have already returned the marriage letter. The fate between me and Miss Wu's family ends here. Chen Ping'an bent down to pick up the money on the ground, turned around and left. The little Taoist was able to bend and stretch. Besides, he was originally here to deliver the marriage certificate and get out of the marriage, and he got 100,000 yuan for nothing. This business is not at a loss. Humph, you're quite witty. Even a poor Taoist like you deserves to marry my daughter. The toad wants to eat swan meat. Li Guiying's voice came from behind, but Chen Ping'an had slowly walked away. I really don't know how the old man made such an engagement for his daughter back then. Fortunately, the marriage certificate has been collected now. Otherwise, if this were to be spread, how could our daughter still be a good person in Jiangzhou? After Chen Ping'an walked away, he took out another marriage certificate from his canvas shoulder bag. Zhang Wanqing, this is really a bit troublesome. Even if he has been living with the old Taoist in the mountains, he is not completely unaware. He knows this Zhang Wanqing. The youngest queen of the Dragon Kingdom, the 22-year-old national goddess, often sees her seductive figure in TV and movies. Her figure and face are impeccable, especially her beautiful legs, accompanied by countless sleepless nights for Chen Ping'an. She is also the only fiancée A.E. that Chen Ping'an knows the most. As for Wu Shui from the Wu family, who had just returned her marriage letter, Chen Ping'an didn't even see anyone, so it's probably not bad. This high-gate courtyard of the Wu family is a second-rate family in Jiangzhou, with billions of assets. Unfortunately, if I didn't have only half a year left to live, I would never have met my fiancée A.E. At worst, I would have exchanged my marriage certificate for more money from the Wu family. Wait. A pleasant voice suddenly came and Chen Ping'an looked over. A white T-shirt, tight yoga pants, slender legs, a graceful figure, delicate facial features, and a particularly tempting little red lip. Wu Shui. Chen Ping'an already knew who the woman in front of her was, and as soon as she thought of her, she chased after her. Wu Shui was practicing yoga at home, and when she heard a servant say that a little Taoist had come outside, she didn't care at first, but in the end, she thought of what her grandfather had said. If one day a little Taoist comes knocking on your door, it will be the man chosen by your grandfather. Remember, no matter what, you must marry him. This is what Grandpa said before his death. She didn't take it seriously, but she couldn't help feeling curious in her heart. Looking at the little Taoist in front of me, who looked even smaller than me, how could such a person be the true love that my grandfather claimed to be? Wu Shui said lightly, "Are you the little Taoist who is engaged to me?" In this era, how many people would take marriage letters seriously? Chen Ping'an looked at his beautiful fiancée A.E. and couldn't help feeling regretful. With his figure and face, it seemed like he would be good to marry him back home. "Hello Miss Wu, my name is Chen Ping'an." Wu Shuidao said, "What are you doing here?" Chen Ping'an intends to tease her, as she can only live for half a year. Of course, she needs to find some fun. Of course it's here to deliver the wedding letter. Sure enough, this little Taoist is the person my grandfather mentioned. Wu Shui said seriously, "Our affairs were all decided by the older generation. I won't marry you." don't be delusional. Although the little Taoist has a good appearance and looks very clean when dressed, how could she possibly marry such a person? Of course, Wu Shui's life is her own decision. Chen Ping'an chuckled and said, "Do you know that the person who really needs this marriage certificate is not me, but you?" Wu Shui furrowed her brows slightly, her beautiful eyebrows beating lightly. "This little Taoist is not a fraud, is he?" She whispered, "No matter what you think, I, Wu Shui, have my own life. Even if my grandfather is still alive, he cannot make decisions about my marriage. You can tell me what you want, as long as it's not too much, I can give it to you." Chen Ping'an shook his head. The marriage certificate had already been returned to the Wu family, and his fate with the Wu family was also marked with a sentence. In the future, the Wu family will live or die, which has nothing to do with him. He just wants to completely cut off the fate related to him before death. In addition to the marriage documents of the Wu family, there are also 8 marriage documents on him. The engagement made by the old Taoist to him back then took away all his luck, otherwise he wouldn't have had only half a year left. The end of fate means that from now on, the affairs of the Wu family have nothing to do with him. Your mother has already given me 100,000 yuan. If you want to give it, of course I don't mind. Looking at Chen Ping'an with a smile, Wu Shui felt uncomfortable all over. This little Taoist was not serious at all. Humph. Wu Shui was very dissatisfied in her heart. Is her engagement only worth 100,000 yuan? This little Taoist deliberately looked at her joke. She didn't know what her mother had said earlier, but now she understands. Mother naturally doesn't allow her to have any involvement with such a little Taoist. Since you have taken my mother's money, that's all for our business. You are not allowed to mention our engagement in front of outsiders in the future. Although she may never see this little Taoist again, what if? So she felt it was necessary to remind this little Taoist. Chen Ping'an smiled and then said, "Thank you very much, Miss Wu, for making it happen." As Chen Ping'an finished speaking, Wu Shui had a strange feeling, as if something had disappeared from within her body. Meanwhile, in the Wu family villa, a ceramic glazed vase enshrined in the living room of the Wu family fell and was directly smashed. Li Guiying's face suddenly changed, and she remembered what the old man had said when he was alive. If the porcelain bottle was broken, the Wu family would be in danger of extinction. Before, she didn't believe in such nagging things, but how could the originally good porcelain bottle in front of her fall off? This porcelain vase, which is also a valuable antique worth millions of dollars, is said to have been left by the ancestors of the Wu family and has been worshipped by the Wu family as a family heirloom. Just when Li Guiying felt this was strange and wanted to call her husband, her phone also rang. Seeing the phone number, Li Guiying quickly answered it. It was a call from her husband's secretary. However, as soon as the phone was connected, the anxious voice of the secretary came from inside. The secretary told him that the leader had fainted in the capital compound and was now on his way to the hospital. Wu Jigang is the #1 figure in the capital of Jiangzhou, in charge of government affairs. For many years, he has been in good health and has a bright future. How could he suddenly faint? Upon hearing her secretary's words, Li Guiying's phone dropped directly to the ground. She stared blankly at the broken porcelain vase on the ground, feeling a wave of fear in her heart. Wu family, is something really going to happen? Chapter 2. Handsome guy, turning around. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old Taoist is the best doctor in the world. He can't even cure his illness, so there must be no cure. Chen Ping'an grew up on the mountain with the old Taoist, and since he began to remember things, he has been learning from the old Taoist and has also mastered his skills. He was well aware that the old Taoist separated his luck to save him. If it weren't for that, he would have died when he was first born. The pressure of qi on the body may not necessarily be a good thing. 9 wedding letters represent 9 levels of luck. Now that the marriage certificate of the Wu family is invalid, the luck borrowed from him by the Wu family naturally dissipates. Chen Ping'an seemed to feel something. He actually had a bold idea in his heart, which was to send the marriage certificate back. Maybe he could regain his luck and continue to live on. However, he now feels that his life is still less than half a year left. Is it a lack of luck? Or rather, this is my fate. After Wu Shui answered the phone and hurriedly left, Chen Ping'an walked down the street with some disappointment. The Wu family has become a mess. The second generation of the Wu family only had 2 sons, the eldest of whom was Wu Jigang, the number 1 figure in the capital of Jiangzhou. Second son Wu Jiqiang, the actual controller of the Wu family's industry. The 2 brothers of the Wu family have always had a good relationship, one working in the official sector and the other working hard in business. Wu Jigang suddenly fell into a coma in the capital courtyard. A group of people from the Wu family rushed to the hospital. When they arrived, all the famous doctors from Jiangzhou were also invited over. The collapse of the head of the capital naturally attracted the attention of many people. Li Guiying and her daughter Wu Shui were waiting outside the emergency room, both with anxious expressions on their faces and already crying. When Wu Jiqiang arrived, his elder brother was already rescuing him. He frowned and asked, "Sister-in-law, my elder brother has been in good health. How could he suddenly fall into a coma?" Li Guiying also looked puzzled and bitter, saying, "I don't know either. The doctor said we don't know what the situation is yet." Wu Jiqiang's expression is also not good. Looking. If something happens to his elder brother, his Wu family in Jiangzhou will become seen as fat meat by others. "Sister-in-law, has anything happened at home? I always feel flustered in my heart." Wu Jiqiang's words seemed to remind Li Guiying that she quickly told Wu Jiqiang about the sudden falling and breaking of the porcelain vase being enshrined. After listening, Wu Jiqiang's face became even uglier. He whispered, "How could this be? The porcelain vase worshipped by the Wu family, both he and his elder brother know some secrets that his sister-in-law does not know. Did anyone come home today?" Wu Jiqiang seemed to have caught something in his mind and asked a question. Li Guiying thought for a moment and only one person came to her home today, the little Taoist who came with a marriage certificate. So she told Wu Jiqiang about the matter of the little Taoist. Wu Jiqiang's expression became increasingly ugly, and he finally said to Li Guiying, "Sister-in-law, you're confused. Do you know where that little Taoist came from? He is a Taoist from Kunlun Mountain Taoist Temple, and now only he can save my elder brother's life." Kunlun Mountain is not unfamiliar to Li Guiying, but why doesn't she know that there are Taoist temples and Taoist priests on Kunlun Mountain? Isn't that a tourist destination? "Sister-in-law, did the little Taoist leave any information? We must find him." Wu Jiqiang cannot be honest with his sister-in-law. Some things are not only secrets of the Wu family, but also the biggest secret in the world. Chen Ping'an was unaware that the second master of the Wu family had issued a bounty of 10 million yuan in Jiangzhou, searching for a young Taoist around the age of 20. He currently lives in a hot spring water collection called Water World in Jiangzhou, which is also known as the Sauna Water Collection. He is waiting here for Zhang Wanqing's arrival. I really don't understand why a big star like Zhang Wanqing would come to such a place. "Handsome guy, turn over and I'll press your back." The technician let out a soft cry. Chen Ping'an obediently flipped over and lay down, enjoying the skills of the technician's little sister. The little sister always gently brushed towards his sensitive area. "Little sister, why don't I tell your fortune?" Chen Ping'an suddenly had a slight movement in his mind. Although he was lying on his stomach, he could feel the disdain of the technician who pressed his back. "Do you know how to deceive women at such a young age?" "Okay, what does the handsome guy want me to do?" The technician is still very polite, pleasing customers is her job. Chen Ping'an said, "It depends on what you want to know." The technician smiled and said, "Of course I want to know where my marriage is." "She is certain that this handsome little guy will say that your marriage is mine." I have already worked very hard to cooperate with your performance. Chen Ping'an smiled slightly and said without hesitation, sure, little sister has a boyfriend in this store, right? The technician's hand slightly froze, but it quickly returned to normal. He must have guessed. Chen Ping'an continued, you have a 2-year-old daughter and a husband at home. He had a car accident and his left leg has been amputated, right? The technician's face suddenly changed as she was massaging Chen Ping'an. She said angrily, do you know me? Other people wouldn't know so much about her except for those who know her. Even colleagues in the company don't know about her. She's a single person. Chen Ping'an said, if you ask me about your marriage, then I'll tell you that it's over. I'll send you another message. If nothing unexpected happens, you'll have an accident tonight. Although fortune-telling is not a great way, if one feels it, they will kindly remind them. This can also be considered fate. For a technician who massages oneself, Chen Ping'an is also considered to be benevolent and righteous. The technician has already confirmed that Chen Ping'an knows her, so she doesn't believe these lies. I'll change the technician for you, and you'll just pretend you haven't seen me before. I'll buy your order for you. In their profession, the most taboo thing is to meet acquaintances. She doesn't remember who this handsome little guy is, but the other person definitely knows her. She volunteered to change technicians and paid him the bill, hoping that the person who knew her would not speak recklessly. Paying the bill is fine, it can be considered as a fortune-telling reward for you, but as I just said, you must take it to heart, so there's no need to change people, and it's almost done. Chen Ping'an rubbed his temples, and it was quite frustrating to peek at the secrets of the heavens. If it weren't for a sudden impulse, he wouldn't have had the idea of telling fortune for this technician. The technician stood up and left. Today, it will take another 2 hours for nothing, but being able to block this man's mouth is not a disadvantage. Chen Ping'an has already reminded her that as for how to choose, it is her problem. Fate is predetermined by fate and cannot be interfered with too much. This is the truth that the old Taoist has always taught him. Chen Ping'an stood up and looked at the time. Around this time, Zhang Wanqing should also be coming. He only calculated that Zhang Wanqing would appear in this place within an approximate time frame, without carefully calculating the detailed details. For him, the consumption of divine souls would be significant. He wouldn't waste his energy on such small matters. Going to Zhang Wanqing's agency to find her would cause her trouble, and the production team wouldn't do either, so this place is the most suitable. Chapter 3. Meddling in one's own business. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhang Wanqing is a goddess of the whole nation, a beautiful woman with impeccable figure and face. She is filming in Jiangzhou, and after work, she thinks of taking a bath and resting at the shop opened by her old classmate's house. In order not to be recognized, she has already used a lot of disguise, wigs, masks, glasses, and so on. Even so, her appearance in places like the hot spring water collection is still very eye-catching. I changed into the pajamas in Shuihui, and my beautiful legs were fully exposed, slender and straight, smooth and translucent like jade. Even if she disguises herself and others cannot recognize her as the superstar Zhang Wanqing, they still know that she is a super beautiful woman. The hot spring water pool is a place where fish and dragons mix, and the appearance of a beautiful woman like her here naturally attracts the attention of LSP. She has already called her old classmate, who will only be arriving at the store in a while. The assistant beside him whispered, Sister Xing, let's go to the private room. There are too many people here, and it's all over if someone recognizes us. Zhang Wanqing has over 50 million fans on social media, and people like her are always the focus wherever they go. Sometimes surrounded by fans, it's difficult to leave without a bodyguard. Zhang Wanqing rarely has such a private life. She is a child star who has been shining since childhood and is always the center of attention wherever she goes. She was only 22 years old, still a playful age, and whispered, "It's okay, let's go play over there." When Xiaola comes, we'll go to the private room to rest. There is a bar, restaurant, game room, table tennis, a children's playground, and a gym in this hall. Zhang Wanqing also wants to try how an ordinary person spends an ordinary day. The assistant is helpless. She has been with Zhang Wanqing for 3 years and knows his temper. Zhang Wanqing walked towards the water bar, ready to have some fruit and a cup of coffee. At this moment, suddenly a pair of salty pig hands reached out, and the person lay on the sleeping bag, watching her walk by. A pair of beautiful legs swayed before her eyes, and then reached out to touch it. The assistant was quick-witted and quickly pulled apart Zhang Wanqing, angrily looking at the old man on the sleeping bag and saying, "What are you doing?" The old man licked his mouth and greedily looked at Zhang Wanqing's beautiful legs, his eyes also sweeping over her. This is a truly top-notch woman. What are you doing? The man said, "What did you say I wanted to do?" His malicious smile made Zhang Wanqing take a step back, and his assistant quickly stood in front of her, blocking the man from looking at Zhang Wanqing. "Damn it, I've seen so many women in my life, I've never seen such beautiful legs before." The man stood up and pushed the assistant away with just one thrust. His strength was so strong that Zhang Wanqing's assistant couldn't stop him at all. The assistant was pushed so hard that he fell directly to the ground, twisted his foot, and wanted to stand up. However, a mournful voice around her reminded her, "You better not move." Originally, this man was not alone. The men sitting on the sleeping bags were all with them. Without her assistant blocking in front of Zhang Wanqing, she was completely exposed in the eyes of the men. "Third master, this girl is really tender. Her legs, tsk. Damn it, why does this girl look a bit familiar to me? It's so beautiful. Third Lord is really lucky. If you come to this shabby place to take a bath, you can still come across such a top-notch product." A group of men commented and criticized Zhang Wanqing, without concealing their intention of infringement in their eyes. Zhang Wanqing was frightened and his face turned pale. These people looked difficult to deal with. The person named Sanyi said directly, "Little girl, I'll give you 1 million. From now on, you can follow Sanyi. I promise you'll eat delicious food and drink spicy food." In his opinion, those who come to take a bath in this kind of sauna are ordinary women. 1 million is already a sky-high price. Just as Zhang Wanqing was about to speak, a figure suddenly walked up and stood in front of her. "Gentlemen, do you need a massage?" The technician in work clothes looked at the few strong men in front of her, feeling angry but still maintaining a smile. Bullying 2 girls, she can't bear it. Seeing the staff, Zhang Wanqing finally breathed a sigh of relief. The third master laughed ominously as he glanced at the technician blocking his prey and sneered, "Mind your own business." One of the people on the side directly took action and kicked the technician away. The technician who slammed heavily on one side of the wooden pillar couldn't even make a sound. She suddenly remembered that half an hour ago, the handsome boy said she was going to have an accident tonight. She could feel the discomfort of being hit by a car in her body, and the person who had just kicked her was walking towards her, and they had no intention of letting her go. These people are not good people and dare to meddle in their own affairs. They are prepared to kill the chicken as a warning to the monkey. People attracted by the noise here are all looking at this place, but they dare not approach. They have never seen such a scene before. Zhang Wanqing also had a pale face and wanted to run away. She regretted it now. If she had known, she would have listened to her assistant and went directly to the private room to wait. "You! Don't come over." Watching the 50-year-old man approach him, Zhang Wanqing felt extremely scared in her heart. The other person had already handed over the meddling technician on the ground, who was now lifeless and unable to speak. "In Jiangzhou, no one dares to meddle in my affairs yet. I have to seek my own death, no wonder others." The old man said coldly, "Just discard it and throw it into the river to feed the fish." At his command, his subordinates clenched their fists and were ready to take action. They are actually going to kill in public. The technician little sister didn't know that she was just kind-hearted to help. How could she encounter such a ruthless person, and the figure of the handsome little guy who told his fortune reappeared in her mind. Don't wait, don't kill her yet. An anxious voice came from one side, and Chen Ping'an walked up with some anxiety. He calculated that this technician's sister would have an accident, but he didn't expect it to be because of Zhang Wanqing. This fate is really strange. Two people who are completely unrelated are connected by some small things. If it weren't for Zhang Wanqing, he would definitely not have meddled in his affairs. What will Zhang Wanqing do if this technician's sister dies here? Zhang Wanqing is still one of his fiancés, and it can be said that there is also some fate between them. Fate has not yet ended, so of course, Zhang Wanqing cannot have anything to do at this time. Seeing the emerging young man, a group of people stared at him with ill intentions. Another stinky fish and rotten shrimp, let's clean up together. Sanyi just glanced at Chen Ping'an and then gave him a soft command. One of them walked up with a grim smile and said, "Kid, you're trying to kill yourself, no wonder someone else." The man holding the technician's little sister also sneered disdainfully, and his fist was already heavily hitting the technician's heart. With this punch, the technician's heart had to be shattered and he died on the spot. But at this moment, his hand seemed to be blocked by some force, and he couldn't go any further no matter what. Chapter 4. I generally do not kill people. You are listening at novelfull.audio. They all said not to kill her, it's really disobedient. Chen Ping'an still wore a smile and looked like a clean big boy. The man walking towards him had a dull expression on his face, as his body suddenly came to a stop and could not move any more. Even if he tried his best, his whole body seemed to be under a immobilization spell. Third Master, hurry up. The subordinates also noticed the strangeness. They were all the bodyguards of the Third Master, ruthless and ruthless. Sanyi also moved his eyes away from the beautiful woman in front of him and looked at Chen Ping'an. Kid, do you know who I am? Sanyi said coldly, I advise you not to meddle in your affairs, otherwise Jiangzhou won't have a place for you to stand. The Third Master, who had seen the strong winds and waves, also noticed the strangeness of his subordinates. You should know that the skills of his subordinates are to meet gods and kill gods, and to meet Buddhas and kill Buddhas. How could his subordinates tell him to leave quickly if he didn't encounter danger? Chen Ping'an walked up slowly and directly put down the technician girl from the man holding the technician girl. I have kindly reminded you, why don't you listen? I see if you dare to meddle in your own business in the future. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, that's right, what should come will eventually come. The previous kick had already broken her spine, and now she is considered disabled, unable to speak or move. Chen Ping'an set her aside, glanced at Zhang Wanqing, and smiled, although women may be troublesome, for the sake of you being my fiancé, I cannot refuse to save you. Zhang Wanqing looked at Chen Ping'an, and there was a slight change in his pale face. The big boy in front of him actually claimed to be her fiancé. Did he recognize the wrong person, or did he know who he was? Just as she was looking at Chen Ping'an and thinking about who the big boy was, Third Master suddenly made an unexpected decision. He wanted to escape, but as soon as he took a step, he froze in place like his bodyguards. Did I tell you to leave? Chen Ping'an walked up and looked at the old man, then his eyebrows twitched slightly. Lin Lao-san, the master of the underground world in Jiangzhou, is still a big fish, tsk. I didn't expect that people like you would also be afraid. Are you afraid that I might kill you? Chen Ping'an's harmless smile gives off a strange feeling because a group of men can't move and just freeze like that. Isn't that a ghost? Don't worry, I usually don't kill people. I only save people, after all, I'm a Taoist. Chen Ping'an had a sigh on his face, and he never expected that Zhang Wanqing would have such good luck to meet the ruler of the underground world in Jiangzhou. Such a person is really unfamiliar to ordinary people. Release me, I can give you anything you want. Lin Laosan finally realized that the big boy in front of him was the kind of person he couldn't afford to provoke, and he possessed the legendary power of taboos. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "You offended my fiancée Ae. She didn't say she would let you go. I dare not let you go." At this moment, Zhang Wanqing was closely watching Chen Ping'an because she had just heard him say he was a Taoist. Taoist, she finally knows who this big boy is. Chen Ping'an looked at Zhang Wanqing with a shocked expression and chuckled, "Fiancé Ae, what do you think we should do?" Although Zhang Wanqing had already recovered from the previously frightened reaction, he still couldn't calm down in his heart. She is very anxious now because the little Taoist has appeared, her fiancé A. I don't know. Her words also made San Yi and his subordinates nervous and afraid. The third master quickly said, "Miss, I'm sorry. I apologize and I'll compensate you 10 million yuan. Please don't let us down, let us go." 10 million is indeed a lot, but in the eyes of Zhang Wanqing, a big star, 10 million is just pocket money. Her calm gaze proves that she doesn't care about money. Chen Ping'an said, 10 million, give it to her. He is talking about the technician who was kicked out by Lin Laosan's subordinates. Okay. Lin Laosan is a smart person, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to dominate the underground world of Jiangzhou. He doesn't even need Chen Ping'an's threat, he knows how to make a choice, because facing someone who controls the power of taboos, no matter how many subordinates he has, it's useless to fight. At the moment Chen Ping'an turned around, Lin Laosan and his subordinates were all able to move. He bowed to Chen Ping'an with a relieved expression and said, "Thank you very much, sir, for sparing your life." Chen Ping'an waved his hand and said, "Get out." He had already squatted down and held the hand of the technician on the ground. He's not taking advantage of it, he's giving Miss an air pump to repair her spine. There's still time, and if it's delayed, even if he takes action, it will take some effort to cure it. The technician's body, which had already lost consciousness, suddenly felt a warm current in her body, allowing her to find a sense of control over her body again. He can save the lives of others, but he cannot save his own life. A few minutes later, Chen Ping'an stood up and smiled faintly, saying, "Sister, take Lin Laosan's money and go home. Didn't you ask me about my marriage? That one in your family is your marriage." According to normal circumstances, if it weren't for his own appearance, the technician would have died. Of course, perhaps this technician wouldn't have happened if he hadn't appeared at the hot spring pool. Destiny, as a fixed number, is filled with many unstable factors. When Chen Ping'an stood up, he saw only two pairs of curious eyes. Zhang Wanqing and her assistant, after what happened just now, are now able to stand firm. She looked at Chen Ping'an, curious about the identity of this big boy, and he said that Xing Jia was his fiancée Ae. Zhang Wanqing also looked at Chen Ping'an because she wanted to take a good look at this little Taoist. "Have you seen enough? Fiancé Ae." Chen Ping'an looked at Zhang Wanqing, who had been disguised, with a smile on his face. He was truly a big star, and even if he disguised himself like this, it would still be a disaster for his beauty. She appeared here and met Lin Laosan, the ruler of Jiangzhou, because she was connected to her own destiny. Zhang Wanqing blushed and wanted to refute. "What fiancé Ae?" At this moment, a short-haired beauty walked up. A round face, some baby fat, big eyes, perfect facial features, and a figure. So big. This is Chen Ping'an's first reaction, which is half as big as Zhang Wanqing's. The woman is Zhang Wanqing's classmate and also her good friend. "Is everything okay?" Chen Xiaola learned from the waiter about what had just happened, but others didn't recognize it. She knew it was the big star Zhang Wanqing. Zhang Wanqing whispered, "It's okay, thanks to him." Chen Xiaola also looked at Chen Ping'an, and the big boy looked very clean. "Star, this is the fiancé A you told me about, that stinky Taoist, looks so small. As Zhang Wanqing's best friend, she is one of the few people who knows that Zhang Wanqing has a fiancé. Are you polite? There's no such thing as saying in front of others that they look so small. Why don't you take a closer look? It's really tasteless. Zhang Wanqing looked around at the people with lingering palpitations and quickly said, "This is not the place to talk, let's leave first." Chen Xiaola nodded and led Zhang Wanqing away, while Chen Ping'an took the initiative to follow. The technician miss, who had been treated by Chen Ping'an, didn't even have time to thank her. She knew that she had met the legendary expert, and tears welled up in her eyes. Suddenly, she felt homesick. Chapter 5. Old Cows Eating Young Grass. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the large private room on the 4th floor of the Water World Hot Spring Water Gathering, Chen Ping'an sat with 3 women standing on the side, scrutinizing him. Chen Xiaola spoke up and said, "Are you really a Taoist? How come I don't look like it?" In her eyes, she was all tied with strange hair, wearing Taoist robes, and looking like a master of Taoism. Chen Ping'an has short hair and a short cut, very clean, and those eyes are always staring in front of her, not serious at all. Zhang Wanqing did not fully believe in Chen Ping'an's identity. She asked, "Do you have any evidence that you said you are Chen Ping'an?" Chen Ping'an certainly wouldn't carry his canvas bag with him, so he couldn't take out his wedding letter. "When you were 8 years old, you wrote me a letter for the first time asking when I would marry you." When Zhang Wanqing was 8 years old and Chen Ping'an was only 4 years old, he was a real child at that time. However, Zhang Wanqing didn't stop writing to him until he was 10 years old, which means he hadn't received a letter from Zhang Wanqing for 8 years. So Zhang Wanqing is Chen Ping'an's best-known fiancé, both in TV news and letters. Upon hearing the contents of his letter, Zhang Wanqing believed that he was truly the fiancé he had never met before. "Didn't you say you're not in good health?" Zhang Wanqing said, "Also, I went to Kunlun Mountain to find you, and there is no Taoist temple there as you mentioned." Chen Ping'an smiled faintly and said softly, "The Taoist temple is in the mountains, of course you can't find it. As for my body, if I tell you, I can only live for 6 months at most. Do you believe that?" Zhang Wanqing looked into Chen Ping'an's eyes and suddenly felt a little sad because she could feel that the big boy had not deceived her. "I remember you replied to me saying that your master is an old immortal or the best divine doctor in the world. He can't even cure you." Thinking of those letters from childhood, Zhang Wanqing felt a bit guilty. She didn't even dare to look at Chen Xiaola, afraid of being laughed at by her. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "Life, aging, illness, and death are things that everyone has to go through. I've been damned since I was born. I have lived an extra 18 years, and I am very satisfied to see you." He grew up in the mountains and for 18 years, apart from the old Taoist, he had no real friends. Zhang Wanqing wrote him a letter, so they are considered childhood friends, and Chen Ping'an has always remembered this different fiancé. At this moment, Zhang Wanqing was already taking off her mask and disguising herself. Her delicate face blushed slightly, and her bright eyes were a bit shy and speechless. "You're only 18 years old." Chen Xiaola was surprised and looked up and down at Chen Ping'an. Your fiancé is only 18 years old. Can you be considered an old ox eating tender grass?" Chen Xiaola laughed and kept jumping in front of her, heart-stopping and moving. Zhang Wanqing glanced at her best friend. "Is that the point? The key should not be that the little Taoist is about to die." The assistant was lost in thought as if she had heard some confidential information, but she didn't expect that Sister Xing really had a fiancé. If her fans know about this, they might go crazy. "Are you here specifically to find me?" Zhang Wanqing used to not believe what Chen Ping'an said in his letter. There was a talking monkey and a flying chicken in the mountains. But what she saw with her own eyes today, it seems that this little Taoist did not deceive him. He really had earth-shattering skills, and at that time, she thought the little Taoist was bragging. Chen Ping'an nodded and said, "Come and take a look at my fiancé AE. By the way, I'll return the marriage certificate to you and end our relationship." Zhang Wanqing stared blankly at Chen Ping'an, thinking that this little Taoist had appeared to marry her. "Are you going to divorce?" Chen Xiaola also realized that if this little Taoist returns the marriage certificate to Zhang Wanqing, wouldn't that be a withdrawal? Although marriage letters do not have much binding force in this era, Zhang Wanqing, a big star and beautiful woman, has been divorced. If this were to be spread, it would startle many people's chins. "Can't we?" Chen Ping'an smiled and said, "I've seen it. After speaking, shouldn't it be over?" Zhang Wanqing had imagined countless times that she would marry a young Taoist. Since she was 8 years old, she knew she had an engagement. So she wrote a letter to the little Taoist, asking when he would come to marry her. After the age of 14, she didn't write any more letters because she understood love. She felt that her love should not be bound by engagement, and she had her own thoughts. She even thought that if that little Taoist came knocking on her door, she would tell him that they were not suitable and that she would not marry the little Taoist. She also considered withdrawing from the marriage. But she never thought that the little Taoist would voluntarily withdraw from the marriage. She is very beautiful. She has been a beautiful woman since childhood, a proud woman in heaven. Men are always moved by her when they see her. Little Taoist is no exception, right? I never expected that the little Taoist would return the marriage certificate to her. Are you really going to divorce? Zhang Wanqing looked at Chen Ping'an, wanting to see if this little Taoist was serious. Unfortunately, what she saw was the calmness in the eyes of the little Taoist, who was serious. Chen Xiaola couldn't help but say, "Star, if your fans know that you have been divorced by a young Taoist, he will definitely die." "I'll tell you." Zhang Wanqing did not reply directly, but said calmly, "I need to go back and ask my grandfather. This marriage was arranged by her, and if you want to withdraw, you should also tell him in person." Chen Ping'an was stunned. Chen Xiaola was also stunned. The assistant was dumbfounded. Does she not want to divorce? "I'm dying." Chen Ping'an said again, "Within 6 months, I will undoubtedly die. Before I die, I will always take back what I have left behind." He is talking about luck, and if he doesn't take it back, he won't be able to reincarnate after death. Zhang Wanqing was very stubborn this time. She looked at Chen Ping'an and said, "You said death so casually. Did you go to the hospital for a check-up? My grandfather knows many famous doctors and even divine doctors. What if they can cure you?" She felt that the little Taoist in front of her didn't look bad and his body looked very healthy. How could he possibly die? Chen Xiaola also nodded and said, "Yes, Star is right. There is a divine doctor in Jiangzhou, and I can also ask my dad to find one for you." As Zhang Wanqing's best friend, she still stands on her side. At this moment, Chen Xiaola's phone rang. After connecting, she said a few words and hung up the phone. "Little Taoist, have you offended the Wu family? The Wu family is looking for you everywhere." The phone she just answered was from the following person. The Wu family sent 10 million yuan to find a Taoist priest, which is exactly like Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an doesn't need to worry, he just needs to think about what's going on with the Wu family. He smiled slightly and said, "Perhaps it was because I went to the Wu family to divorce. They regret it now." Puff. Chen Xiaola couldn't help but widen her eyes and looked at Chen Ping'an, saying, "You also have an engagement with the Wu family. Is that Wu Shui?" She has a gourd-like expression on her face, and Wu Shui is the legendary #1 beauty in Jiangzhou. As a third-rate family in Jiangzhou, the relationship between the Chen and Wu families is relatively good, and she naturally knows that the Wu family only has one daughter, Wu Shui. Zhang Wanqing was also a bit surprised. Chen Ping'an actually has more than just an engagement with her. "Do you have any other engagement?" She felt inexplicably uncomfortable in her heart, knowing that she was her fiancé. How could she still have an engagement? Chen Ping'an smiled and said, including you, the old Taoist has arranged 9 marriages for me. I am currently having a headache. How can I withdraw all these marriages before I die? Chapter 6 Wu Family Sun.in.law. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 9 engagements. Zhang Wanqing was greatly shocked. Chen Xiaola was greatly shocked. The assistant was also greatly shocked. From the perspectives of the identities of the Miss Wu Shui from the Wu family in Jiangzhou and the celebrity Zhang Wanqing, it is certain that other engagement partners are also not simple. What exactly is this little Taoist's identity? What kind of person is the old Taoist in his mouth? Surprisingly, he was able to make so many engagements with him. Does this mean that if he weren't dying, he could have married back the women in these engagements? Chen Xiaola glanced at Chen Ping'an's small body. Can his body handle it? Chen Ping'an didn't know the thoughts of the 3 women in front of him. He was truly distressed, and cutting off ties was something he had to accomplish. He had to personally deliver the marriage documents for 9 engagements and 9 fiancés. On the Wu family's side, it was because he received 100,000 yuan from the Wu family and also received a promise from Wu Shui to cancel the engagement, that the luck borrowed by the Wu family from him dissipated. Just like now, he said he wanted to return the marriage certificate to Zhang Wanqing, but without Zhang Wanqing's consent, he couldn't sever this bond. He only has less than half a year left, so I hope all the remaining engagements can be cancelled smoothly. Zhang Wanqing remained silent, and she was a bit angry. Originally, the little Taoist had never belonged to her alone. It was like knowing the existence of this fiancé all along, but not realizing that he was not the only fiancé of her own. It's like a cake that originally belonged to oneself, suddenly being divided by a group of people to eat. Did you really go to the Wu family to divorce? Chen Xiaola, on the other hand, reflects the emotions of the onlookers. The experience of this young Taoist can be written into a book. Chen Ping'an nodded and said, I just went this morning and the Wu family has agreed. It went very smoothly. Chen Xiaola said, do you know that Mr. Wu, the capital of Jiangzhou, was rescuing us in the hospital? She also heard what her family said. Now that Jiangzhou has spread, many people in Jiangzhou are waiting for the big tree of the Wu family to fall. I see. Chen Ping'an's mind twitched slightly, and he understood that what happened in the Wu family was closely related to his withdrawal from the Wu family. But even so, what if it weren't for the Wu family borrowing his luck 18 years ago, the Wu family wouldn't have had the glory and wealth of these 18 years. The Wu family may have long been in ruins, and there wouldn't be a family like the Wu family in Jiangzhou. They were mutual, living an extra 18 years, but also allowing their Wu family to enjoy 18 years of wealth and prosperity. Even if one does not withdraw from marriage, within 6 months, if one dies, the luck borrowed by the Wu family will dissipate, and the same outcome will be achieved. The difference is that it was only 6 months ahead of schedule. The key is to personally cut off the worldly ties. Only after one's own death can there be an afterlife. As long as there is still a marriage contract and the worldly ties are not over, he will be a lonely soul and a wild ghost after death. Chen Xiaola asked Chen Ping'an many questions, which she was curious about, or she helped Zhang Wanqing ask. Finally, Chen Xiaola kindly said, the Wu family is looking for you everywhere in Jiangzhou. It's best for you to find a place to hide first. She didn't know the reason why the Wu family was looking for Chen Ping'an, but she kindly reminded them, after all, Chen Ping'an, this little Taoist, looks strange and attractive. If it weren't for her best friend's fiancé, she would have wanted to take action. Chen Ping'an looked at Zhang Wanqing and said, I'll go with her. Zhang Wanqing originally intended to refuse, but for some reason, she nodded and said, okay. She often works in Jiangzhou and has also bought a house here. Living with an extra person won't affect her life. And she decided to find time to take Chen Ping'an back to her grandfather and ask him to help find someone to take a look at. If she can cure the young Taoist, it will be considered as a reward for her divorce. Yes, that's it. On the Wu family's side, someone provided information that they saw the little Taoist enter the hot spring water pool of the water world. But by the time the second master of the Wu family brought someone to find him, there was no longer any trace of the little Taoist here. After some inquiries, the Wu family also found Lin Laosan. Lin Laosan is the master of the underground world in Jiangzhou, surrounded by numerous experts. However, what happened today made him wary and scared. 10 million cash, he has personally sent it to the little technician. As for that young man, he dare not even investigate his identity and background, control the power of taboos, and kill him as easily as slaughtering a dog. The second master of the Wu family, Wu Jiqiang, personally found Lin Laosan in a high-end club. Lin Laosan is engaged in grey business and naturally has many contacts with the Wu family. Uncle Wu is the capital of Jiangzhou, with a superior position. He naturally dares not give face to the Wu family, but this does not mean he is afraid of the Wu family. Uncle Wu is currently in the hospital for rescue, and no one in Jiangzhou knows. So after Wu Jiqiang explained his purpose, Lin Laosan's expression became very cold. Wu Dong, I know what you're looking for from this young gentleman, it's just to help the capital lord with treatment. Lin Laosan said, don't say I don't know the whereabouts of Mr. Xiao, even if I know, do you think I dare to tell you? He personally experienced the terror of the power of taboos today, even if given 10,000 courage, he dared not reveal anything about that man. Wu Jiqiang came from the hot spring water and learned about some conflicts between Lin Laosan and Chen Ping'an from there. Even if it was Zhang Wanqing's identity, he had investigated it, but he didn't know that Zhang Wanqing was also Chen Ping'an's fiancée. After all, only a few people knew about it. San Yi, you may have misunderstood. I came to him because he is my son-in-law from the Wu family. This engagement was made by my old man 18 years ago. He certainly knew that the little Taoist had unpredictable abilities, otherwise he wouldn't have placed all his hopes on finding him. Lin Laosan was surprised to find that the Wu family still had such a son-in-law. The Wu family is about to take off, and Lin Laosan immediately changed into a smiling face. Second master, I accidentally offended this young gentleman today and I don't know his identity. I really don't know where he is. His attitude, with a 180-degree turn, even changed his calling to second master. Huan Cheng, he is not so polite, nor will he take Wu Jiqiang seriously. His backer is the Bai family of the top family in Jiangzhou, and there are several figures in the Bai family such as the head of the capital. The old man of the Bai family is also a central figure in the Dragon Kingdom. Wu Jiqiang didn't have any hope either. He sighed slightly and said, if Third Lord's people see him, please let me know and I won't disturb you. After speaking, he stood up and said goodbye, leaving his elder brother unconscious. The doctor couldn't find the cause, and the family business he was in charge of also encountered considerable trouble. All of this requires finding the little Taoist. It's all my fault, sister-in-law. Without asking what my elder brother and I sent the little Taoist away for 100,000 yuan. Wu Jiqiang felt uncomfortable thinking about this. At this time, Chen Ping'an had already moved to Zhang Wanqing's home in Jiangzhou. This is a large flat of over 400 square meters, where she lives with her assistant. The house is very large, so it looks very empty. With the addition of a little Taoist like Chen Ping'an, I feel much safer. After confirming multiple times, Zhang Wanqing found out that she was the only fiancée who wrote a letter to Chen Ping'an and had contact with her. Finally, she had a good face and her attitude towards Chen Ping'an improved significantly. Chapter 7. I received money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Ping'an doesn't care about his place of residence. He has long known that Zhang Wanqing is the most difficult engagement to make. They had correspondence when they were children and were people with memories, so now he must cut off this bond as soon as possible. Zhang Wanqing borrowed his luck, but now the luck is smooth. Even if she took away this luck herself, she wouldn't be in danger. Qi luck is something that others cannot see or touch. Chen Ping'an could only see a faint red light on Zhang Wanqing's body, which was known as the auspicious moment. Arrange a room for Chen Ping'an, and Zhang Wanqing will return to his room to call his grandfather who is far away in the capital and tell him about the situation here. When Zhang Wanqing said that Chen Ping'an only had half a year left, the old man of the Zhang family seemed not surprised at all. Instead, he sighed deeply and said, "Is it still like this? No matter what, even if it's grandpa's debt to you, spend the past 6 months with him. No matter what he has, you must meet him." This is what grandpa said to her, to fulfill all demands. Does he want to be himself, wash himself clean, climb onto the bed, and wait for him to be lucky? Zhang Wanqing couldn't articulate these words, and after hanging up the phone, she was also reminiscing about her grandfather's words. Grandpa must know more about the identity of a little Taoist, otherwise how could he possibly marry himself to a stranger? Grandpa also said, but Xiao said he couldn't be saved, so he definitely couldn't be saved. That is to say, this little Taoist is really dying, with less than half a year left in his lifespan. Do you want to be an immortal? Thinking of these, Zhang Wanqing fell asleep slowly in a daze. In the room not far away, Chen Ping'an seemed to sense something and said helplessly, "What a trouble." He stood up, didn't disturb the 2 sleeping women, and went downstairs directly. This is a high-end residential area in Jiangzhou, all of which are large flat floors. According to the housing prices in Jiangzhou, tens of thousands of yuan per square meter, and this house is priced at tens of millions. People living here are either rich or expensive. At night, there were no people in the community either. After Chen Ping'an came out, he looked at the shadow and said, "Come out." A body image is like a shadow emerging from the darkness. "Mr. Chen, I am the person in charge of the Jiangzhou Supervision Institute. You can call me Jiang Chen. I am responsible for all your affairs in Jiangzhou." Heiying is a middle-aged man, but when facing Chen Ping'an, he is very respectful and even a bit cautious. The Taoist from Kunlun Mountain Taoist Temple unexpectedly arrived in Jiangzhou, which made him very uneasy. As a special department of the Dragon Kingdom, he is well aware of what the Taoist temple in Kunlun Mountains represents. It is said that martial arts can lead to chaos in martial arts, but in the Kunlun Mountain Taoist temple, it is a forbidden area for humans, and also a forbidden area for demons. It is a place to guard the Dragon Kingdom, and a word to ban the existence of demons. The Taoist priest of Kunlun Mountain only said one thing. From now on, there will be no demons in the Dragon Kingdom. For 100 years since then, there have been no demons rampant in the Dragon Kingdom. The supervisory yuan. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "I came down the mountain to walk in the world just to get rid of worldly affairs. Jiangzhou won't stay long either. Tell your superiors that I will return to Kunlun within 6 months, so you don't have to keep an eye on me." He used abnormal force at the hot spring water gathering today, which led to the arrival of people from the Supervision Institute. Coupled with Zhang Wanqing's phone call, he must not be able to hide in Jiangzhou. He never thought about hiding his identity. After all, not many people know about Kunlun Mountain Taoist Temple. "Mr. Chen, rest assured that we will not disturb your life. We will quietly clean up any obstacles for you." Speaking so well, it's not that I'm afraid Chen Ping'an will launch a killing spree. The Taoist priests in Kunlun Mountain want to kill people, but the supervisory yuan cannot stop them. Clearing the obstruction is just to prevent Chen Ping'an from killing too many people. Chen Ping'an smiled bitterly. He really had no intention of killing anyone, otherwise today that Lin Laosan and his subordinates would have died. "Whatever you want. What needs to be said has already been said, and Chen Ping'an doesn't want to waste time. He came out not just to see this person. Jiang Qin bowed and retreated into the darkness, as if he had never appeared before. A figure ran over at this moment and was stunned when she saw Chen Ping'an standing downstairs. The first person in the Wu family to find Chen Ping'an was actually the beautiful woman Wu Shui. Even though Chen Ping'an has already returned his marriage letter, fate has made it necessary to meet the person he should. Wu Shui's eyes were slightly red, and her father was still unconscious in the hospital. According to Uncle Air, only the little Taoist in front of her could save her father now. Although she didn't want to beg for this little Taoist, she had to find him for the sake of her father. Chen Ping'an, do you know I'm coming? She only found out about Chen Ping'an's appearance in this community through a good friend who happened to be Zhang Wanqing's neighbor. She saw this big star bring back a little Taoist. Chen Ping'an certainly wouldn't admit that he had calculated it. He shook his head and said, I don't know, I happened to be downstairs preparing to walk. Wu Shui was a bit skeptical, but at this moment, business still matters. Chen Ping'an, can you save my dad? It's difficult to say this, but she's willing to do anything as long as she can save her father. Chen Ping'an shook his head again and said, no way. I can't save him, I'm dying myself. The first sentence was a lie, and the last sentence was something he casually said, this terminally ill persona is really useful. No, my second uncle said, only you can save my dad. Wu Shui bit her lips and said, my second uncle said, I can't divorce you, can't I? Did you prescribe some medicine to my dad? If you don't want to divorce, just say it. She is not sure what Uncle Air is saying now, so she can only brainstorm some plot on her own. Chen Ping'an chuckled and said, although you are a beautiful woman, you cannot think so beautifully. Divorce, I'm serious. Even with the arrival of the lunar age, I can't do it. Besides, I've already received the money. The dust that was finally cut off cannot have any further connection. He didn't turn a blind eye to death, but made a choice that was beneficial to himself. What happened to the Wu family was inevitable. Even if it weren't for now, if I died, the Wu family would still have the same ending, maybe even worse than now. Qi luck is such a useful thing, otherwise those who violate the law will not be able to steal someone else's qi luck. I'll give you money, 1 million, 10 million will do. As long as you save my dad, I can promise you anything. Wu Shui is in a hurry. She really can't do anything now. The best doctors in Jiangzhou have said that her father's cause is unknown, but his organs are slowly failing, and he will really die in at most a month. Chen Ping'an mentioned money, so she thinks this little Taoist likes money. Chen Ping'an said firmly, I have always regarded money as dirt. Miss Wu, it's not that I don't save it, it's that I can't save it. I can't live long on my own. You insist that I save him. If I tell you, if I save him, I will die tomorrow. Will you still let me save him? Wu Shui fell silent. She really wanted to say it, but she couldn't say the word. Chen Ping'an continued, my fate with your Wu family ends here. Tell your family not to disturb me, otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. The cleaner the disconnection, the better. There wasn't much connection, so he naturally didn't want the Wu family to cling to him. Chapter 8. Please, help my husband. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wu Shui was stunned. What does this little Taoist mean? Are you afraid of being entangled with him, or are you afraid that your family will regret their divorce? But think about it, isn't this the case now? Uncle Air said she must marry a young Taoist and cannot withdraw. She turned around and ran, shedding tears as she ran. Chen Ping'an calmly shook his head behind her, feeling a little guilty towards the old Taoist for making so many promises to him. You're really cruel. Zhang Wanqing walked out wearing pajamas on the side. She was originally asleep, but suddenly woke up. When she heard Chen Ping'an open the door and leave, she quietly followed and happened to see a beautiful woman coming to find Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an knew she was behind her back and smiled slightly. I'm serious. Chen Ping'an said, if I were to save her father, it would be me who died. Although the situation is not as exaggerated as he said, it is also similar. I had already severed ties with the Wu family. If he had taken action to save someone, wouldn't he have continued this relationship? The life of the capital of the Wu family should not have been cut off, and it was him who died. Zhang Wanqing felt a bit uncomfortable in his heart. This little Taoist looks quite nice, why is he going to die? She never believed it was true and said seriously, tomorrow I'll take you to the hospital for a check-up. I don't believe you're going to die so young. Although Grandpa also said it was hopeless, Zhang Wanqing still wanted to try. The next morning, Zhang Wanqing did take a leave of absence and didn't go to film. He wanted to take Chen Ping'an to the hospital. Unable to rely on Zhang Wanqing's hard work, Chen Ping'an had to agree to go to the hospital with her for a physical examination. Jiangzhou People's Hospital, also the largest hospital in Jiangzhou, gathers more than half of the famous doctors in Jiangzhou. Zhang Wanqing disguised her mask eyes well and went to the hospital with Chen Ping'an. She didn't bring her assistant, but with Chen Ping'an present, she believed she wouldn't have any problems either. She personally assigned an expert number to Chen Ping'an, and at the request of the old expert, she conducted examinations such as blood tests, urine tests, CT scans, and magnetic resonance imaging. I have gone through all the examinations that can be done, and this set of procedures has been completed. It is already past 11 o'clock, and the doctor is almost on lunch break. Looking at Chen Ping'an's examination data, the old experts who have worked at the People's Hospital for more than 40 years were stunned, and he kept flipping through various data. Suddenly, he stared at Chen Ping'an tightly, reciting words like a monster. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Based on these data, you are already a dead person. How could it be like this? There must be something wrong. Go check again. I've never seen such a disease before. Your blood is already dead blood. This old expert, like a white mouse about to study, had an excited expression on his face, eager to unravel Chen Ping'an's expression. Zhang Wanqing's eyes turned red, and upon receiving this answer, she naturally felt very disappointed and inexplicably uncomfortable in her heart. She pulled Chen Ping'an away, afraid that the old expert would call someone to arrest him and study him. In fact, as soon as they left, the people from the supervisory yuan took away all the information about Chen Ping'an, and those who had contact with Chen Ping'an were all given a ban. After leaving the hospital, Zhang Wanqing looked at Chen Ping'an with a smile on his face and said, "Can you still laugh?" Chen Ping'an had long known that he wouldn't live long. When he was young, the old Taoist said he would renew his life. After 18 years of continuing his life, the old Taoist was finally powerless. He died as early as 18 years ago. Blood has no activity at all, it's just that there is a vital energy in the body to maintain its vitality. If we talk about his body, it's more like a container. And he is a powerful soul. I've said it all, I'm going to die. Chen Ping'an said, when I was a child, I wrote a letter to tell you that I don't know how long I can live, but it's satisfying to see you alive. Zhang Wanqing's nose was sore. She had already asked Chen Ping'an yesterday and found out that he had no friends. It turned out that when she was a child, only she knew how to write letters to him. She even regrets now, why didn't she write a letter to Chen Ping'an after the age of 14? He has lived in the mountains for so many years and has never had any friends. Don't cry. Chen Ping'an quickly stopped and said, I can't stand women crying the most. Zhang Wanqing gave him a white glance, and the brewing sadness dissipated a bit. Let's go, I'll take you to visit Jiangzhou city today. Grandpa said, try to meet the requirements of this little Taoist as much as possible. He is going to die anyway. He has been living on the Kunlun Mountains and has never seen the outside world, so I took him around to see. But just as they were about to leave, Chen Ping'an's face changed drastically. Because of a noblewoman, she suddenly knelt in front of Chen Ping'an. Li Guiying is also at the People's Hospital. Last night, her daughter found the young Taoist Chen Ping'an, but he refused to save people and warned them not to approach him. She quietly followed Chen Ping'an when she saw him in the hospital. She didn't believe it. As a capital lady, kneeling in front of this little Taoist, the little Taoist could still face death without saving her. Chen Ping'an was very angry because she felt the woman's ill intentions. With so many people coming and going, she knelt in front of herself. Isn't she baking herself on the fire? Even Zhang Wanqing felt the change in the little Taoist beside him, as if in an instant, the little Taoist had become a cold-blooded and merciless creature. Chen Ping'an, yesterday was my fault. I beg you now to save my husband. Li Guiying is really good at picking places. As soon as she said these words, everyone around her who knew her curiously looked at Chen Ping'an. Li Guiying was the wife of the capital and the noblewoman of Jiangzhou. Her kneeling made Chen Ping'an almost unable to suppress her anger. Mrs. Wu, what do you mean? Are you really trying to force me to take action, Wu family? Chen Ping'an changed his previous friendly and gentle demeanor. His voice was cold, his eyes were cold, so cold that even Zhang Wanqing around him felt scared. My 18-year relationship with the Wu family should have ended from yesterday. The Wu family is no longer related to me, and I am no longer related to the Wu family. Li Guiying is not foolish, on the contrary, he seems to have guessed some secrets from Wu Jiqiang's attitude towards the little Taoist. For people like little Taoist priests, they cannot be treated in the usual way, so she found the right time to kneel here. Li Guiying said, Chen Ping'an, my daughter is your fiancée A.E. I received yesterday's marriage certificate. If she doesn't agree to terminate the engagement, your engagement will still be valid. I know I shouldn't look down on you. Please spare the Wu family and my husband. Chen Ping'an was so angry that she smiled. This damn woman actually thought she was retaliating against her Wu family and her husband. What a fool. Is it possible for the Wu family to change their fate? However, this woman is so shameless that she even said that she received the marriage certificate and that withdrawing from the marriage is not a count. In the middle of nowhere, it unexpectedly led to a faint connection between myself and the Wu family. The luck of the Wu family seems to have returned to some extent. Chen Ping'an closed his eyes to sense, he really wanted to calculate what was going on with his luck. How could it come back even though it has already dissipated? Just as he was trying to pry into this glimmer of mystery, there seemed to be a thunderous roar in his mind, which left his mind blank and almost unstoppable. Puff! Chen Ping'an opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, his face instantly turning pale and powerless. That little bit of mystery actually caused him such a deep injury. His vomiting of blood frightened Zhang Wanqing and also frightened the shameless woman Li Guiying. Zhang Wanqing quickly helped Chen Ping'an and anxiously said, How are you? Chapter 9. I paid money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Ping'an looked at Zhang Wanqing, who was concerned about him, and shook his head slightly. I can't die yet. Chen Ping'an's appearance looks really scary. This is the end result of him peeking at that trace of heavenly secrets. Even if he is a young Taoist in the Kunlun Mountain Taoist Temple, he cannot peek at the luck related to himself. For so many years, he has been trying to save himself. The old Taoist couldn't save him, but he wouldn't give up on his own. The first solution he came up with was to reclaim his qi and cut off his worldly ties. So he had to withdraw from the marriage. Just now, he felt the change in luck borrowed from the Wu family, which made him want to see the truth. However, the result was that he was instantly seriously injured. Chen Ping'an is now even more certain that these borrowed qi yun contain great secrets. Madam Wu, I can't even save myself. Who else do you want me to save? His face, combined with the scene of vomiting blood just now, all fell into the eyes of many people. Now everyone only feels that Li Guiying is being aggressive and her gaze is very unfriendly. A little Taoist, still a big boy, how could he have the ability to save the capital adults? It's really funny. Li Guiying was also frightened by the little Taoist's reaction just now. When she wanted to speak, Wu Jiqiang had already walked over. The second master of the Wu family has always had great respect for his sister-in-law, and there is no scheming or sibling property disputes like those of the big families. But at this moment, Wu Jiqiang was very angry. He walked up and slapped his kneeling sister-in-law directly. Li Guiying has been beaten and blinded. She has never been beaten like this in her life. Wu Jiqiang angrily said, "Sister-in-law, are you trying to kill our Wu family?" He was very angry when he learned that his sister-in-law had given the little Taoist 100,000 yuan. A great opportunity was passed away by an ignorant woman for 100,000 yuan. Li Guiying looked at her uncle angrily, her eyes full of grievances. Wu Jiqiang shook his head, not allowing his sister-in-law to speak, and then pulled her away. From beginning to end, he didn't even glance at Chen Ping'an. Chen Ping'an frowned slightly, and not all the Wu family were idiots. His actions completely interrupted his thoughts. Zhang Wanqing quickly pulled Chen Ping'an to the parking lot. After Li Guiying was dragged away and reached a deserted place, she angrily said, "Wu Jiqiang, dare you hit me? Why, your big brother is going to die. Are your wings hard?" Wu Jiqiang took a deep breath and said, "Sister-in-law, if I hadn't hit you, you might have died by now. That little Taoist, our Wu family cannot afford to provoke him." Li Guiying was not convinced. She didn't believe that the little Taoist had such great abilities and dared to kill in public. "Wu Jiqiang, the person who said that stinky Taoist could save your big brother is you. Why are you so afraid of him? Do you want to watch your big brother die?" Li Guiying said, "You need to think carefully. If your older brother can't wake up, can you hold on to everything you have now? You tell me, who exactly is that stinky Taoist? What is his identity? Can you, the second master of the Wu family, fight against me for him?" Wu Jiqiang sighed, unable to reveal the origin and identity of the little Taoist, as it would only harm his sister-in-law and Xiaoshue's child. "Sister-in-law, if you believe me, don't ask so many questions. If you want to save big brother, it's not enough to force him like this." Wu Jiqiang said, "We can only let Xiaoshue give it a try. She is the fiancée of that person. Once he agrees to help on this matter, even in the face of a big crisis, my Wu family can turn it around." Zhang Wanqing took Chen Ping'an to Jiangzhou International Trade Plaza. Because there is the best clothing store here, she needs to dress the little Taoist in Taoist attire, otherwise he will look strange wherever he goes. He is a clean and good-looking big boy, but his Taoist robe is too conspicuous. Guomao Square, Givenchy Specialty Store. This is a high-end custom clothing store, where every T-shirt costs tens of thousands or even tens of thousands, and there are also handmade clothes worth tens of millions. Chen Ping'an couldn't help but grit his teeth when he saw the price. The old Taoist did not deceive anyone, and the people at the foot of the mountain were very luxurious. There are many things that need to be completed when going down the mountain. Yesterday, I went to the massage parlor that the old Taoist had mentioned, but there is still a lot of healthcare that needs to be completed. Before death, one must be a true man. Glancing at Zhang Wanqing beside me, forget it. This woman and I have a deep connection, and I cannot have any ulterior motives towards her, otherwise I will constantly sever my ties with her. Be sure to find a woman who won't cause trouble for yourself, be beautiful, and have legs that look as beautiful as Zhang Wanqing. Pooh! How could you think of her again? Chen Ping'an had a palpitating feeling. The sauna culture that the old Taoist had instilled in him, as well as the women at the foot of his mountain, did they mean something? Let's give this one a try. Zhang Wanqing was holding a set of clothes that she had chosen and felt were the most suitable for Chen Ping'an. After a glance at the price, a set of clothes costs 300,000 yuan. Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, It's too expensive, I don't have the money." When he went down the mountain, the old Taoist only gave him 1,000 yuan, saying that if he wanted to survive, he had to rely on himself. Chen Ping'an always thought that the old Taoist had something to say, but in fact, he was being stingy. Zhang Wanqing smiled, "This little Taoist is quite cute. I'll give it to you, you don't have to spend any money." She certainly knew that the little Taoist who had lived on the mountain for 18 years had no money. Chen Ping'an refused directly and said, "No way. Just kidding, he's going to cut off his relationship with Zhang Wanqing. If he accepts her gift, the fate will be even deeper." Zhang Wanqing looked at the little Taoist with some disappointment, and she was also a bit angry. She said directly, "I am your fiancé AE. What's wrong with giving you a piece of clothing?" The waiters on one side were all smiling, "This kid is too unintelligent." Chen Ping'an quickly said, "Miss Zhang, don't you know the hardest way to accept the favor of a beautiful woman? Just because you are my fiancé AE, I cannot accept anything you give unless you agree to withdraw and accept my marriage letter. If Zhang Wanqing agrees to divorce, then accepting this gift would be considered a transaction." Zhang Wanqing suddenly smiled and looked at him, saying, "So, you stayed at my house last night and had my breakfast this morning. How do you calculate that?" Chen Ping'an said, "I gave the money." He did indeed give money, leaving 100 yuan in Zhang Wanqing's house. As long as money is given, it is considered a transaction, and it is not for nothing. Yes, that's the truth. You. Zhang Wanqing was so angry that he looked at the little Taoist in front of him who couldn't understand the charm. He was really a stone in the bathroom, smelly and hard. "What about what I sent?" A pleasant voice came from outside the door, and a beautiful figure walked slowly. Zhang Wanqing also knows this woman, the most beautiful woman in Jiangzhou, the Miss Wu Shui of the Wu family. At this moment, Wu Shui had a graceful figure, dressed in close-fitting clothes that showcased her figure to the fullest, and her slender legs were even more thought-provoking. She looked at Chen Ping'an and said indifferently, "I'm your fiancé AE. You should accept the clothes I gave you." Last night, she met with her second uncle and explained Chen Ping'an's attitude. His meaning was that no matter what methods were used, Chen Ping'an could not be divorced, and she had to rely on her to keep him. Although Wu Shui didn't know why her second uncle had to do this, she had to come to find Chen Ping'an again for the sake of the Wu family and to save her father. "This is the marriage certificate you sent to my house yesterday. I will return it to you now and express my intention. If you want to withdraw, I, Wu Shui, do not agree." Chapter 10. You continue, don't worry about me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chen Ping'an was stunned directly. Wu Shui surprisingly returned the wedding letter. Even Zhang Wanqing looked at Wu Shui with a wary expression. This Miss Wu from the Wu family doesn't seem so easy to deal with. She didn't even notice it herself, and she didn't actually reject her identity as the fiancé AE of the little Taoist beside her. Now I see a beautiful woman holding a marriage certificate coming to the little Taoist to say she doesn't agree to divorce, and the mood of this big star can be imagined. The people in Givenchy's specialty store were all stunned by Wu Shui's words. Those who can enter this high-end clothing store for consumption are all celebrities from Jiangzhou, who are not unfamiliar with this young lady from the Wu family. They seem to have misunderstood that since Wu Shui had an engagement and was also divorced by someone else. How could she not agree to divorce? Oh my God, this is a rare big news in Jiangzhou. The incident of the Wu family's capital official falling into a coma and being hospitalized has only spread on a small scale. Young people are more concerned about the gossip of the Miss Wu, the most beautiful woman in Jiangzhou. Someone has taken out their phone, secretly took photos, and decided to eat melons in their own circle. Chen Ping'an looked at Wu Shui and found that the dissipated energy on her body was slowly recovering, and the faint red light had returned. Getting out of marriage is indeed not that easy. After Wu Shui disagreed with his divorce, the Wu family returned to the Wu family. No wonder he saw his luck dissipate yesterday, but couldn't return to him. At this moment, Chen Ping'an even had the illusion that an old Taoist was behind the scenes. Under these circumstances, only the old Taoist has the ability to distribute his own luck to others. His face was slightly pale, as he had been injured while peeping at Tianji in the hospital before. Now that the luck of the Wu family has returned, he has actually felt the slightest backlash of his luck. Fortunately, this luck already belonged to him, otherwise just the backlash of luck would have caused him to lose the remaining 6 months of his life. Why do you need it? Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, I still like you from yesterday. Your life should not be bound by this marriage letter. Wu Shui bit her lips, her appearance was a fatal temptation for men. Even Chen Ping'an looked a bit dazed. The old Taoist said that the women at the foot of the mountain were all bone scrapers, and if they were entangled, it would be difficult to escape. The old Taoist was very experienced. Zhang Wanqing said defiantly, you're really shameless. You've agreed to divorce, and you're still clinging to it. She is not afraid of any Miss Wu from the Wu family. As her grandfather, the Wu family dare not offend her. Others don't know the disguised Zhang Wanqing, but Wu Shui does. She looks at this big star who doesn't intersect with her. I really don't know how this young Taoist who just came down the mountain could walk with a big star like Zhang Wanqing. Big star, my fiancé AE and I should have nothing to do with you, an outsider. Since she does not agree to divorce, she must make it clear that Chen Ping'an is her fiancé A, which is also the intention of her second uncle. So even if she feels 10,000 unwillingness in her heart, she must show her attitude. Hee, I'm an outsider, you're the outsider, right? Zhang Wanqing is not a fuel-efficient lamp either. She said directly, I've known him since I was 8 years old. You said I'm an outsider, do you know who he is? Do you know where he lives? Her words left Wu Shui speechless. She knew nothing about the little Taoist, only that he was the fiancé AE arranged for her by her grandfather. As for where the little Taoist comes from, what his background is, and what kind of family members he has, she knows nothing. So what? Even if you're friends, you're just friends. Wu Shui also looked at Zhang Wanqing provocatively and said, I am her fiancé AE, and I have a marriage certificate as evidence. Zhang Wanqing was so angry that she looked at Chen Ping'an and said, where is my marriage certificate? Ah! Chen Ping'an is watching a play, and he really likes the plot of palace fights. If he could gather all 9 fiancés together, it would be even more exciting. He took out a marriage certificate from his shoulder bag, which belonged to Zhang Wanqing. Zhang Wanqing snatched him over and boasted to Wu Shui, you have a good idea. It's not just you who have an engagement with him. Since your Wu family doesn't like him, why bother asking him? He was my childhood friend and also my fiancé A. You both withdrew. Why are you still clinging to him? It's a pity you're still so good looking. Do you still have face? It turns out that when women compete, it's so interesting that even the big star Zhang Wanqing shows a jealous attitude of little women. Wu Shui was stunned and looked at the marriage certificate in Zhang Wanqing's hand. Big star Zhang Wanqing and this little Taoist also have a marriage certificate. The crowd watching the play around became even more excited, and someone suddenly exclaimed, Zhang Wanqing, she is the big star Zhang Wanqing. Oh my goodness, Zhang Wanqing and Miss Wu's fiancé AE are the same person. Mom, who is this little Taoist? Is he a young master from the capital? The onlookers were already stunned, their eyes constantly scanning over Wu Shui and Zhang Wanqing. No wonder this woman looks like a top-notch beauty. At first glance, she really is Zhang Wanqing. Even if she disguises herself, she can still tell that she is the big star Zhang Wanqing. One is the national goddess and superstar Zhang Wanqing. One is the most beautiful woman in Jiangzhou, Miss Wu Shui from the Wu family. Are these 2 super beauties competing for the same man? Wu Shui was also afraid of trouble and said to the salesperson standing aside, we haven't cleared the scene yet. This international trade plaza was originally the property of the Wu family, and she was also a regular here. She said to clear the premises, and the staff immediately followed suit. Under normal circumstances, if the celebrity Zhang Wanqing were to reveal her identity, she would have to clear the scene. No matter how unwilling the onlookers in the store were, they were politely invited out by the staff. When there were only 3 people left in the store, Chen Ping'an walked over and sat down, as if the 2 women had nothing to do with his argument. The shop assistants are all far away and dare not approach unless they don't want this high-paying job anymore. Wu Shui looked angrily at the young Taoist's indifferent and aloof demeanor. Zhang Wanqing also looked dissatisfied at the little Taoist who was eating melons. "Keep going, you don't have to worry about me." Chen Ping'an sat aside, feeling a sigh in his heart. It would be even better if there were some melon seeds and peanuts. Wu Shui's face thinned a bit, and she snorted coldly, not arguing with Zhang Wanqing. At this time, the People's Hospital was located in the special ward of the capital Wujigang. Mr. Wujigang, who is unconscious, has different identities and is guarded by doctors and nurses 24 hours a day. Any data changes on the instrument need to be recorded. Suddenly, there was a strange change in the values of the instruments connected to the capital, and the data of the capital, which was declining in all aspects, miraculously increased. The doctors and nurses were all stunned by the changes in the equipment, but they knew that the organs of this capital adult were constantly failing, and they were already in a state of death. But the current situation has frightened them into confusion. "Hurry up, inform the dean and them quickly." The doctor anxiously ordered the nurses around him, fearing that while he was on duty, the capital official would suddenly have an accident, so he wouldn't have to do it.